Before he was the voice, before the spotlight, before the temptations, David Ruffin was a child who learned something early. People leave, and if you don't hold on tight enough, you get replaced. David Ruffin was born into a life that didn't begin with security. His mother died shortly after he was born. That's not a detail, it's a defining moment. Because when your first experience of connection is lost, it leaves a mark you don't always understand, but you carry it anyway. He was raised by his father, a minister, a man of structure, a man of discipline. But by many accounts, this wasn't a childhood filled with warmth. It was strict, it was controlled. And for a young boy trying to understand love, it may have felt distant. And so, he didn't stay. He ran. More than once. Not towards something, but away from something. Think about that for a moment. A child leaving home, not because he has a plan, but because staying doesn't feel like safety. What does that do to a person? What does it teach them about trust, about connection, about belonging? By the time he reached his teenage years, David Ruffin wasn't building a future in the traditional sense. He was surviving, moving from place to place, taking opportunities where he could find them. He gravitated toward music early, not just because of talent, but because music gave him something he hadn't consistently had: attention, connection, a response. He spent time around traveling performers, including exposure to touring acts like Little Richard's Circle. But he wasn't the star. Not yet. He was on the outside, looking in, watching, learning, waiting, sleeping where he could, working where he could. No foundation, no real safety net, just a voice and the hope that it could carry him somewhere more stable. But when your life is built on uncertainty, even opportunity doesn't feel permanent. It feels temporary, like something you have to hold on to before it disappears. So ask yourself this: if everything in your life has been temporary, would you ever truly feel secure, even when things finally start going right? Then came the opportunity that would change everything: the temptations. To the outside world, it was a group. But to David Ruffin, it may have felt like something much deeper: a system, a structure, a brotherhood, something steady, something real. Under Motown, everything was precise. Artists were developed, trained, refined. How you dressed, how you moved, how you spoke, how you performed. It was controlled, but it worked. And for many artists, that kind of structure created discipline. But for someone like Ruffin, it may have created something else entirely. For the first time, there was something solid in his life, something consistent, something he could lose. And when you've spent your life losing things, you don't take that lightly. You hold on to it, tightly, maybe too tightly. As his role in the group grew, so did his presence. His voice stood out, not just technically, but emotionally. It connected, and people responded to it strongly. But here's where the internal shift begins, because being seen is powerful, especially for someone who may have spent years feeling unseen. And being needed, that's even more powerful, because if you're needed, you're not easily replaced. But what happens when that need becomes something deeper? Not just professional, but personal. What happens when your identity becomes tied to your importance in a group? Ruffin didn't just want to be part of the temptation. He needed to matter within it. Because in his world, if you weren't essential, you were replaceable. And that belief didn't come from Motown. It came from his life before it, from loss, from instability, from never quite knowing what was permanent. So the question becomes, was he chasing greatness, or was he trying to protect his place? As time went on, those internal pressures began to show outwardly. There were tensions, conflicts, moments where Ruffin's behavior created distance between him and the group. Documented accounts point to missed commitments, inconsistencies, and growing friction. But if you look at it through a different lens, it starts to look less like ego and more like fear. Because sometimes the people who push the hardest aren't trying to dominate, they're trying not to disappear. And sometimes the louder someone becomes, the more they're trying to be heard before they feel ignored. So ask yourself, was he trying to outshine the group, or trying to make sure he couldn't be overlooked within it? There's another layer to this story that often gets overlooked. Fame doesn't fix instability. It amplifies it. It puts pressure on the very parts of you that were never fully settled. And in Ruffin's case, the same drive that helped him rise may have also made it harder for him to stay balanced. Because when your sense of self is tied to your position, any threat to that position feels personal, not professional, personal. And when things feel personal, people react. As tensions grew, so did the distance. And eventually, the separation became official. David Ruffin was no longer part of the Temptations. And just like that, the one place that may have felt like home was gone. But here's something that often isn't talked about enough. After his departure, there were moments where Ruffin still showed up, still tried to be present, still acted as if he belonged. Not in a symbolic way, but in a very real human way, as if the connection hadn't ended for him the way it had for everyone else. And that says something, because that's not just about music, that's about identity. That's about not being ready to let go of the one place that made you feel seen. So what do we call that? Denial or something deeper? After leaving the group, Ruffin continued his career. There were solo efforts, there were moments of success, but nothing quite matched what he had experienced before. And that's another difficult truth. Sometimes it's not just about talent, it's about context, timing, chemistry. And once that's gone, it's hard to recreate. But even later in life, there were reunions, moments where Ruffin reconnected with former group members, which tells us something important. Despite everything, the bond was never completely broken, because it wasn't just a group, it was a shared experience, a chapter of life that couldn't be erased. So now we come back to the question, was David Ruffin replaced? Or was he a man shaped by a lifetime of instability, trying to hold on to the one thing that finally felt secure? Was it ego, or was it fear? Fear of being overlooked, fear of being removed, fear of being left behind. Again, because when you strip away the fame, the image, the legacy, what you're left with is a person shaped by everything they've been through. And sometimes the very traits that help someone rise are the same ones that make it hard for them to stay. David Ruffin didn't just lose his place in a group. He may have lost something far more personal, a sense of belonging, a sense of security, a sense of being needed. And maybe that's what he was chasing all along. So let's talk about it. Was David Ruffin driven by ego or by something deeper? A fear that started long before the fame? And here's the question I really want you to think about. If your entire life taught you that nothing lasts, how would you act when you finally had something to lose? Would you protect it or push it away without realizing it? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this isn't just a story about music. It's a story about what happens when success meets an unresolved past. And sometimes that's where the real story begins.